Hey there, it's Casey Dim at TaxSaleAcademy.com, and welcome back to this week's episode of the Tax Sale Podcast. Now, today's episode is something that I've been wanting to record for a little while, but I was waiting to get more information and kind of see how things started to play out. I've gotten a lot of comments, emails, and questions about this specific topic. So there's been a lot of changes in the tax sale industry. And a lot of these are legal changes, court rulings, and just a lot of confusion, especially amongst people that just happen to stumble across a headline or two. Much of this will surround the Supreme Court case of Tyler versus Hennepin County. So today I want to dive into a few things. I want to talk first about what that case entailed. What was it about and why was it so important? I want to talk about how it's already impacting some states' laws, and most importantly, how you can still profit despite the changes in the tax sale laws in certain states. Here's the truth. The tax sale business is changing, but it's always changing. It's constantly evolving. The opportunities will always be there if you know where to look. So let's get started with the case that kind of kicked all this into motion. That's the Tyler versus Hennepin County. So here is the short version of it. Geraldine Tyler was a 94-year-old woman in Minnesota who fell behind on her property taxes. She owed around $15,000 after they calculated the delinquent taxes, interest, fees, that kind of stuff. Eventually, the county foreclosed on that property. They sold her property for $40,000. So she owed $15,000, but they sold it for $40,000. There's a $25,000 difference there. The issue is that they kept the $25,000. So they didn't just recover the back due taxes, interest, and penalties. They recover more than that, and they kept it for themselves. They kept that $25,000 overage. Miss Tyler received nothing. So she sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And here's the key part to all this. The court unanimously ruled in her favor. They declared that taking more than what is owed to the county violates the taking clause of the Fifth Amendment. So in other words, the counties can't just take the property and keep somebody else's equity like that. It's unconstitutional. And I want to be very, very clear here. I agree with that ruling wholeheartedly. Counties have every right, and they should have every right, to collect what is owed in back due taxes, interest, and any fees that they might have incurred to try to collect on those back due taxes and interest. But they should not have the ability to just simply pocket the surplus from that delinquent taxpayer's equity. That money, in my opinion, and in most opinions of a lot of states, should first go to any lien holders that had a debt against that property, with the remainder going back to the former property owner. So you pay your debts, keep the equity that a public auction brings you if you're a delinquent taxpayer. That's fair, that's what's right, and that's exactly what the court has decided. Now, this isn't just about the Tyler case either. We've seen cases like this before. Wayside Church versus Van Buren County in Michigan comes to mind. That's another situation where the government kept tens of thousands of dollars more than it was due for themselves, and Wayside Church, the person or the entity in that case that lost the property, they didn't get that excess. That's not how it should work. The government should not just keep the excess funds or the surplus funds. And thankfully, the courts are saying that as well. And on a side note here, many states are actually now ruling that those surplus, those excess funds should be very easy to get, and that it should require the county to put forth diligent effort to return those funds to the delinquent taxpayer or any lien holders at the time the property went through tax foreclosure. Additionally, a lot of these finder's fees that some people are charging are being declared illegal and predatory, with civil and potentially criminal penalties following. So this case and a lot of other ones have really kind of sent a rippling effect through the tax sale business. And the truth is, many states already returned those fees. Many states had outlawed those surplus funds, finder's fees, all that good stuff already. So it's nothing new. It's just taking some time to go from one state to the next. So how does it do that, right? What happens now? As you might imagine, the Supreme Court ruling really shook things up, and a lot of tax collectors, a lot of different government officials took notice. Now, the states with a similar process as Minnesota, and many tax lien states as well, are kind of scrambling to rewrite their laws to align with the court's decision. But the problem here is that what the Supreme Court has said and what the state statutes in many states say do not match. So, you have a locally elected official who has taken an oath of office that he or she will follow the state statutes. However, those state statutes have been ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court of the United States. That really puts the tax collector in quite a bind. And when things like that happen, changes must occur. But those changes, they don't happen overnight. It takes legislation. Legislators have to meet. New bills have to be proposed, agreed upon, voted on. Then it eventually trickles down to the local departments and finally to the local county level where the auctions are actually taking place. And if you've dealt with the government at any level, you know this is not fast. It will take years in some areas. Now, changes are already starting to happen in some states. Take Arizona, for example. I did a whole video on my YouTube channel about this not too long ago. Their legislature moved pretty fast after the Tyler case, and they made changes to ensure that former property owners get surplus proceeds after a tax foreclosure. They also made adjustments as to how lien holders get paid and how surpluses are distributed. I expect a lot of other states to kind of follow suit. And honestly, I think most tax lien states will start transitioning to a hybrid model, similar to what Florida does, for example. So in Florida, you have both tax liens and tax deeds. If a property is delinquent in their taxes, a tax lien is sold against that property. The tax lien buyer then has 2 years they have to wait for the delinquent taxpayer to come in, pay off that tax lien plus interest and fees. After those 2 years, the tax lien holder can take that lien and force it to a tax deed auction. Now here's the key part. That auction, the tax deed auction, will start at the amount that is owed to the tax lien holder. If somebody bids the opening bid, the tax lien holder will get their principal, their interest, their fees, and everything else that they have invested into that property. Now, if that property sells above and beyond that opening bid, you will have a surplus there. You'll have the difference between what the tax lien holder was owed and what the tax deed holder paid for the property, and that surplus will go back to the delinquent taxpayer, the person that lost the property. It's very simple. It's very efficient. It might sound a little bit complicated if you're not used to a hybrid system, but it truly honors everybody's rights. I think more and more states are going to eventually shift to a model like this, especially the tax lien states. It makes sense, it's fair, it balances investor returns, public needs, and property owner protections. So, with all that said, you might be wondering, does this mean tax sale investing is over? Are all the profits gone? Absolutely not. Yes, things are changing, but the core of this business remains the same. Taxes must be paid in order for our local governments to operate the way they need to operate, to provide police, fire, school, roads, all this stuff that we use on a daily basis. We must pay for that through our property taxes. They need all that stuff. And that means that there must be a system in place to enforce property tax collection, because without it, the entire local government system will break down. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to be in a place where we have no law enforcement, no medical, no road maintenance, no schools, or any other public service. So no, the business itself is not going anywhere. In fact, it's been around for thousands and thousands of years, literally since the days of the Roman Empire, and it's going to be around long after me and likely you leave this earth. So here's your advantage right now. Some people are a little confused, especially in the states that are enacting changes to their process. Some people are scared. A lot of people are like, I just want to sit on the sidelines. I want to see what happens. Don't do that. If you stay active, if you stay informed, if you keep reading the laws, you are going to be able to spot those shifts before others do, and you will stay ahead of everybody else. So for example, some states might be less profitable than they once were. Other states, they might be much better now. So Arizona, for example, is much more desirable if you're a tax deed investor opposed to a tax lien investor, because the laws have changed and now the properties are going to be sold at tax deed. You can go in, you can buy some of those properties at a tax deed auction, and you don't need to wait years for that tax lien to mature. But you have to know where to look and what to watch for. Just remember that change will always bring opportunity. There's going to be new systems, new processes, new laws, confusion, all sorts of things. And you can either sit on the sidelines and wait for it to all kind of pan out, which again is going to take years and years and years, or you can be the first person up at bat to take your swing at the new system that they're enacting in whatever state you're investing in, if they are even changing the laws there, and you can be the first in line to get that next deal, to get the new opportunity that is put in front of you because of the changes. So my advice here, don't panic, don't freeze, don't assume the worst, don't sit on the sidelines, read, study, adapt your business, and above all else, keep moving forward. You know, this business has evolved many, many times before. It's going to evolve again. There will always be opportunity for those who are willing to learn, stay sharp, and do the work. And right now, the states that are changing their laws because of the Tyler versus Hennepin County case and many other cases, those states are going to provide a lot of opportunities for the people that are right there waiting for them. Don't sit back. Actively seek out these investments. Find the exact changes that your county that you are investing in are doing and take advantage of those opportunities. And again, it's not going to be every state. In fact, it probably won't be most states. A number of states are changing laws. A number of states, it's going to be business as usual. So make sure you check your local laws and make sure you do a little bit of research. That's all I've got for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Tax Sell Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please do me a huge favor. Leave a positive review. Click that thumbs up button if you're watching us on YouTube, that 5-star rating if you're on one of the podcast apps. These ratings really help us out. And as always, if we can be of any additional help, for more resources, strategies, and support, make sure you head on over to TaxSellAcademy.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time right here on the Tax Sell Podcast. Bye-bye.